Dante Varelli had exactly 60 days to find a bride, or his mother's 70th birthday would end with the same empty chair beside him, and this time, Valeria Varelli was done pretending it did not hurt. I learned that on a quiet Thursday evening, when the most difficult client of my career walked into my matchmaking office and asked for something even money could not arrange quickly. A woman his mother could believe in. Not a decoration for one dinner, not a stranger polished enough to impress old families, and not the kind of woman who would smile at his last name before she understood the man carrying it. A real woman, someone serious, someone he could bring to Valeria's birthday party and say, without shame or performance, "Mama, this is her." Halfway through those 60 days, Dante Varelli would stand on the opposite side of my desk staring at 5 dark fingerprints wrapped around my wrist. My lip would be split beneath concealer. A high collar would hide the mark near my shoulder. Every breath would pull against the pain spreading beneath my ribs, and the files of the 3 women I had chosen for him would still be arranged neatly between us. He would ask who had touched me. I would tell him I had fallen. He would know I was lying. For one long moment, I would expect the most feared man in New York to demand a name, call his guards, or promise the kind of revenge men whispered about when they thought Dante Varelli could not hear them. He would do none of those things. His eyes would move from the fingerprints on my skin to the 3 women's files on my desk. "Keep all of them in the process," he would say. Then he would walk away. The next evening, photographs would show him entering the Varelli mansion beside the woman everyone expected him to marry. She would be dressed in red, cameras flashing around her as Valeria waited inside to welcome the woman society had already decided belonged beside her son. I would stare at those photographs with bruises hidden beneath my sleeves and believe Dante's silence had given me the only answer that mattered. He had seen what someone had done to me, and he had still walked toward another woman. At least that was what I believed. But on the first night Dante entered my office, there were no fingerprints on my wrist, no woman in red standing beside him, and no reason for me to understand that the most dangerous part of helping a mafia boss choose a bride would not be his enemies. It would be falling in love with him while he appeared to be choosing someone else. That first evening was Thursday, May 7th. My name is Lena Marchetti. I owned Marchetti Matches, a private matchmaking agency on East 68th Street, built by my mother for people who wanted love handled quietly. We served widowers afraid that loving again meant replacing a ghost, divorced women who no longer trusted attention, wealthy sons who confused duty with devotion, and lonely people too proud to say loneliness out loud. My mother used to tell me that people rarely came to a matchmaker because they could not meet someone. They came because they no longer trusted themselves to recognize the right person when she finally stood in front of them. I was good at recognizing people. I could tell when a man wanted a wife, and when he only wanted someone beautiful enough to confirm his importance. I could hear the difference between nervous laughter and humiliation. I knew when a woman said she wanted independence, but secretly hoped someone would finally notice how tired she was. I knew which widowers still set 2 cups beside the coffee machine, which divorced men called control traditional values, and which wealthy clients believed generosity excused the fact that they had never learned to listen. I could recognize almost everything. What I could not recognize was the exact moment helping Dante Varelli choose another woman would begin to break my own heart. Dante did not look like a man who struggled to meet women. At 38, he was unmarried, powerful, and feared by people who lowered their voices when they said his name. Newspapers called him a shipping executive and property investor. Prosecutors preferred careful phrases like alleged influence and suspected associations. People who understood how the city actually operated called him a mafia boss and stopped asking questions. 2 men in dark suits waited beside a black car outside my window. Dante came upstairs alone. He entered without knocking, then stopped just inside the doorway, as though he had remembered that this was one room in Manhattan he did not own. He was tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that looked expensive without needing to advertise the fact. His dark hair was brushed neatly back. A faint shadow of stubble sharpened his jaw, and his expression was controlled enough to make emotion feel like classified information. "We are closed," I said. "I know." His voice was low and calm. "Then you also know appointments are required. Your assistant said you had no openings for 3 weeks, so you ignored her. I came after your final appointment because I did not want to displace anyone." That answer was more considerate than I expected. It did not make me trust him. "Mr. Varelli," I said, keeping one hand on the folder in front of me. Marchetti matches. Does not sell brides. I am not here to buy. You arrived after closing with guards outside. They are not here to negotiate your fee. That is reassuring. The corner of his mouth moved, but the expression disappeared before it became a smile. He crossed the office and sat in the chair opposite my desk without waiting to be invited. He did not sprawl. He did not study the furniture as if calculating what it was worth. He rested both hands on the arms of the chair and waited, as though waiting were a discipline someone had forced him to learn. "Why are you here?" I asked. "My mother is turning 70 in 60 days. That explains the deadline. It does not explain the bride." For the first time, Dante looked away from me. His gaze moved toward the framed wedding photographs covering the wall behind my desk. Couples my mother had introduced. Couples I had introduced. Smiling people captured in the easiest moment of love, before marriage asked them to prove any of it. "When I asked my mother what she wanted for her birthday," he said, "she did not ask for jewelry, a trip, another party, or a donation made in her name. She asked me to bring someone real to dinner." "Someone real," I repeated. A woman I could imagine choosing after the guests left. His voice remained steady, but something beneath it tightened. Not a paid smile. Not a convenient date. Not someone willing to sit beside me for one evening because my name makes good photographs. She wants to look across the table and believe I will not spend the rest of my life alone. And what do you want? I want her to stop looking at the empty chair. That was not the same answer. I noticed. He noticed that I noticed. Neither of us said so. "Your mother has waited 38 years, I said. "Why does this have to happen now?" Dante's jaw moved once before settling again. "Her doctor spoke to me 3 days ago. Is she ill? Not in the way that makes people gather at hospitals." The control in his voice made the sentence more painful. "Her heart is steady but tired. Her knees are becoming unreliable. Long dinners cost her more than she admits. The doctor said next year may not be as easy." Not impossible. No. Not tragic. No. Just not as easy. Yes. Men like Dante heard gentle warnings as verdicts. I had seen it before. My mother's doctors had once told me that treatment was becoming less effective. They said it softly, surrounded by words like adjustment and comfort, but all I heard was time becoming smaller. Dante sat across from me with the same late understanding behind his eyes. He had spent years believing his mother would always be waiting at the table. Now someone had reminded him that even patient women eventually ran out of birthdays. "There is another reason," he said. "Of course there is. My father created the Varelli Legacy Trust before he died. The trustees review voting powers every September. If I remain unmarried without what they call a clear household succession plan, several relatives can challenge parts of my authority. So your mother's birthday is emotional, but the marriage is financial." His eyes returned to mine. "No. The trust matters." "It does. Then why no?" "Because trustees can be fought." He paused. "Time cannot." That was the first answer he gave me that did not sound like strategy. I studied him more carefully. He was not asking me to find love in 60 days. He was asking me to create proof before his mother stopped believing proof was possible. That was dangerous. Urgency made people careless. Fear made them confuse relief with love. Powerful men were especially vulnerable because everyone around them was paid to agree when they became unreasonable. "I should send you away," I said. "Why?" "Because 60 days is not enough time to promise marriage honestly." "I did not ask for a promise." "You asked for a woman you can present as someone you could choose." "Yes, that still makes her part of a performance." His expression hardened slightly. "I said no performance. Your mother, trustees, extended family, and every newspaper interested in your name will be watching." "What would you call that?" He remained silent. I leaned back in my chair. "A woman is not proof that you are emotionally stable, Mr. Varelli. She is not evidence for a board review. She is not a birthday gift for your mother. And she is certainly not an empty chair with a pulse." The room became very still. Most men with his kind of power reacted badly when challenged. Some became louder. Others smiled in the particular way men smile while deciding how disrespect will be punished later. Dante did neither. He reached inside his jacket, removed a folded check and placed it on my desk. It was blank except for his signature. I pushed it back without looking at the amount he expected me to imagine. Money can buy introductions, I said. It cannot make a woman feel safe beside you. He looked at the check between us. What can? Truth would be a useful beginning. He picked up the check, folded it once, and returned it to his pocket. Ask. I opened a new client file and wrote Dante Varelli across the top. What do you want in a wife? He looked toward the window, where evening lights had begun appearing in the buildings across the street. I do not know. That is not a good beginning. It is the only honest one I have. I set my pen down. Do you want beauty? I am not blind, but it is not enough. Family connections? I have too many already. Obedience? His gaze sharpened. No. Most controlling men answer that too quickly. Do you believe I am controlling? You entered my office without an appointment and brought a blank check. Fair. Do you want children? That question stopped him. Not dramatically. His expression barely changed, but the silence became heavier. His jaw moved once, then settled. I never let myself think that far. Why? Because thinking that far means imagining someone staying. That was the first crack in him. Not a dramatic confession, not a trembling voice or lowered head, just a thin line across marble, small enough to miss unless someone had spent her life studying where people broke. I had seen the same look in widowers who still slept on one side of the bed, in divorced women who kept their married names because changing them felt like admitting failure, and in men who called themselves independent because abandoned sounded too painful. I had never seen it on a man whose silence seemed capable of making the entire building hold its breath. Dante had mistaken survival for a personality. He had built a life so controlled that no one could leave a space he had never allowed them to enter. Tell me about your mother, I said. Dante's eyes changed. She married my father at 19, he said. She stayed with him for 41 years. Was she happy? My father protected her, provided for her, never embarrassed her publicly. That was not my question. He studied me for several seconds. No, he said. I do not think she was happy. Why? Because he gave her everything people could see and almost nothing she could feel. Did he love her? Yes. Did she feel loved? His silence lasted longer this time. I wrote one sentence in the file. What did you write? That your greatest fear is not being abandoned. What is it? Becoming your father. Something moved behind his eyes. Pain, irritation, perhaps recognition. You have known me less than an hour. I have known men like you for 11 years. Men like me? Men who call control protection because protection sounds kinder. His face became unreadable. You are not easily frightened. I did not say I was not frightened. That seemed to interest him. Then why speak to me this way? Because fear does not improve compatibility. I closed the file. Before I introduce you to anyone, I need to see the life she would be entering. You want to visit my home. A woman does not marry a dinner reservation. She marries the mornings after it. Tomorrow at 11. I have appointments. Cancel them. I looked at him. He held my gaze for 1 second, then understood. Tomorrow at 11, if you are available, he corrected. Better. Was that a test? Everything is a test when a man enters my office asking for a bride in 60 days. The Varelli mansion stood behind iron gates and old trees on a private road north of Manhattan. I arrived late Friday morning, May 8th, after moving 2 appointments and refusing the driver Dante had sent. The house was not the cold modern fortress I had imagined. Warm stone, ivy, long windows, and gardens arranged around a central courtyard gave it the appearance of an old family home that had learned to conceal its weapons. Security men occupied the property so discreetly that a guest could pretend they were gardeners, until one noticed how carefully they watched every moving hand. Dante met me at the entrance wearing another dark suit. You came alone, he said. Was I expected to bring guards? Most people who know my name do not enter these gates without reassurance. I have 4 appointments tomorrow. If I disappear, several wealthy divorcees will complain publicly. You make jokes when nervous. You notice too much for a client. You ask to be examined. Before I could answer, a petite woman in a deep blue dress crossed the marble entrance hall toward us. Valeria Varelli had silver hair arranged neatly at her neck, sharp blue-gray eyes, and a cane she appeared to regard as a personal insult. She took both my hands. "So you are Lena Marchetti?" "I am. The woman who returned my son's blank check." Dante's jaw tightened. "Mama, do not interrupt. I have waited 38 years to see you uncomfortable near a woman." I looked at him. "He told you about the check?" "Dante tells me almost nothing. Rosa tells me enough, and his face tells me the rest." "Rosa is the housekeeper," Dante said. "Rosa is civilization," Valeria corrected. "Come. We will have coffee before my son begins managing the entire morning." A fourth person waited at the breakfast table. Rosina Varelli was Valeria's late husband's cousin, one of the trustees who controlled the legacy fund, and the kind of woman who wore pearls before noon because ordinary jewelry failed to communicate rank. Her gaze moved over my taupe suit, modest shoes, and leather folder. "The matchmaker," she said. "How discreet. That is usually the point." I assumed men like Dante met women without professional assistance. Meeting women and recognizing a suitable partner are different skills. Valeria hid a smile behind her coffee cup. Rosina did not. "My preference has always been Serena Bellini," she said. "Old family, excellent education. No scandals. She understands the obligations attached to a name." "Serena has not been selected," Dante replied. "Not officially." Rosina turned toward me. "Surely your profession begins with the obvious. My work begins with the client and ends with the family. Not unless he plans to marry all of you." Valeria laughed so suddenly that her spoon struck the saucer. Dante looked down, but I caught the faint movement at the corner of his mouth. Rosina's expression cooled. "Miss Marchetti is being paid to evaluate candidates," she said. "Not to entertain us." Dante lifted his eyes. "She is being paid for judgment none of us possess. Treated accordingly. It was a professional defense. Nothing more." Still, the words reached somewhere inside me that had grown accustomed to standing alone. After breakfast, I asked Dante to show me the house as it actually operated, not as visitors saw it. His office contained 3 phones, 2 locked cabinets, and 1 photograph of Valeria as a young bride. His bedroom was immaculate and nearly impersonal, as if he slept there only because the body required a location. The dining room seated 24. Valeria told me Dante ate most evenings alone in his study. The guest suites were always prepared and rarely occupied. There was space everywhere and intimacy nowhere. "You want a wife?" I said, as we stood beside a library window overlooking the courtyard. "But your life has no place for a woman who expects to be noticed." I would make one. A woman can tell the difference between a place being made for her and a space being cleared around her. "Is that going in the file?" "It already did." He watched me write. "What would you require?" "From a client?" "From a husband." "I am not under consideration. Hypothetically." "Hypothetically, I would require him to understand that marriage does not make my work, friends, habits, or opinions less important than his." "Reasonable." "You answered too quickly." "You assume every answer is evidence against me." "Most clients lie in their first interview." "Am I lying?" "Not yet. You are still deciding which truths are safe." For one suspended moment, the distance between us felt smaller. Then Valeria called his name. We found her trying to stand without using her cane. Pain tightened her mouth. Dante crossed the room immediately, but he did not embarrass her by calling staff. He moved a footstool beneath her legs, knelt, and loosened one shoe where swelling pressed against leather. "I am not made of glass," Valeria said. "No," he replied. "You are made of stubbornness and bad knees." She touched his hair, and he looked younger beneath her hand. I turned away before he could see what the moment did to me. Compassion was dangerous when attached to the wrong man. By Monday, May 11th, I had reduced a list of 47 women to 12. By Wednesday, 7 had been eliminated through background checks, conflicting values, or honest refusal after learning what entering Dante's life would involve. One woman admired powerful men only from a safe distance. Another asked whether the engagement would include a guaranteed apartment in Paris. A third said she could tolerate criminal rumors, but not Valeria's involvement in Sunday dinners. That left 3 serious candidates. Elise Monroe was a corporate attorney with dark hair, a dry sense of humor, and enough confidence to make powerful men sit straighter. Serena Bellini was the woman Rosina had mentioned. She restored historic buildings, came from an old Italian family, and had built a career independent of the name that opened doors for her. Bianca Russo was different from both. She worked as an education coordinator at a small museum, cared for her widowed mother in Queens, wore simple dresses, and apologized during our first interview because her water glass had left a circle on my desk. I selected her because sincerity matters in rooms filled with polished people. Elise met Dante first on Friday evening, May 15th. She did not ask how many houses he owned. She asked whether his future wife would retain independent access to money, whether she could disagree with him publicly, and whether his security arrangements required consent or obedience. "Do people disagree with you?" she asked over dinner. "Frequently." "Do they remain employed?" "The useful ones." "Do they remain alive?" "Usually," Elise smiled. "That answer requires improvement." Dante looked across the restaurant toward the table where I sat observing. His eyes searched my face before returning to Elise. I lowered my gaze to my notes. After Elise left, Dante arrived at my office even though I had suggested a telephone debrief. It was nearly 10. He removed his jacket and sat across from me as if late evenings in my office had already become a habit. "You did not dislike her," I said. "No. She challenged you. Repeatedly. You asked for courage. I did. Then why do you look exhausted?" Every question became an argument. Perhaps because every answer sounded like an order. "You agree with her. That is not relevant. You were watching me. That is my job." You frowned when I said, "Separate finances were unnecessary, because they may be necessary to her." "Would they be necessary to you?" "I am not a candidate." His gaze held mine. "You say that often. Because you keep forgetting it." The radiator in the corner struck twice with a metallic knock. Dante turned his head. "Does it always make that sound?" "Only when the heat attempts escape." "Replace it. Choose a wife." You redirect personal questions professionally. Practice makes perfect. We discussed Elise for 15 minutes. Dante remained for 45. He asked about the photographs on my wall and which couple was my favorite. I pointed toward Miriam and Walter, two widowed 72-year-olds who had spent 3 years arguing in the same bookstore before either admitted they were waiting for the other to arrive. "Why did they need you?" Dante asked. "They did not need an introduction. They needed permission to believe life had not ended." "Did you give it?" I reminded them permission was theirs. His eyes moved from the photograph to me. "You believe that for everyone except yourself." My hand went still around my coffee cup. "We are discussing your case. Who was he?" "Good night, Mr. Varelli." "That serious. Good night." The following morning, a heating technician arrived before I did. I called Dante immediately. "You sent someone to repair my radiator." The noise interfered with conversation. "You were not invited to another conversation. I assumed there would be one." "You do that often." "You said the office needed warmth." "I said the radiator was trying to escape." "It has been contained." I should have been angry. Instead, I stood in the newly quiet office smiling before I remembered not to. Serena Bellini met Dante on Monday, May 18th in Valeria's garden. She brought a rosemary plant instead of flowers, because Valeria had once mentioned her late husband growing it outside their first apartment. Serena did not perform the gesture. She placed the plant near the kitchen wall and said, "Some things deserve to stay where memory can reach them." Valeria's eyes filled. Rosina looked satisfied. Dante studied Serena with genuine interest. She asked about his redevelopment plans and challenged his decision to replace an old theater with private offices. "Not everything unprofitable is useless," she said. "And not everything old deserves saving," Dante replied. "That is what men say when they become impatient with memory." Dante laughed. Not the polite breath of amusement he used at breakfast. A real laugh that changed his face and made him look younger. I wrote high compatibility in the margin of Serena's file and pressed my pen hard enough to mark the next page. This was success. I had found a woman capable of entering Dante's world without disappearing inside it. I should have felt proud. Instead, something sharp moved beneath my ribs. Dante came to my office that evening. 2 cups of coffee were already waiting. He looked at them and then at me. You remembered. It is my job. Is it? Do not become sentimental because I observed a beverage. He sat down. You liked Serena. She is intelligent, emotionally composed, kind to your mother, and unimpressed by your name. That sounds like approval. It is. Then why do you look disappointed? I opened the file. You are imagining things. I rarely do. Your mother imagines grandchildren whenever you stand near a woman. Perhaps it is hereditary. He watched me for several seconds, then allowed the subject to die. We discussed Serena for 20 minutes. He stayed for an hour. Bianca Russo's first meeting took place on Wednesday afternoon, May 20th, inside a private conservatory at the Varelli estate. She wore a pale blue dress and smoothed the edge of her napkin whenever someone addressed her directly. Dante treated her with a patience I had not seen during Elise's arguments or Serena's confident challenges. When Bianca dropped her spoon, Dante picked it up before 3 members of staff could move. I am sorry, she whispered. For gravity? She smiled despite herself. The meeting softened after that. Then Bianca asked a question that changed the air. Does anyone outside your family have access to your private study? Dante's expression did not move. Why? Bianca's fingers tightened around the napkin. You said people depend on knowing where to find you. I wondered whether privacy is possible in a house like this. The study is private. Of course. She lowered her eyes. I wrote the question in my notes. Afterward, Bianca avoided looking at me. At 6:30 that evening, an unknown number sent one sentence to my phone. Stop asking questions about Bianca Russo's family. I read it twice. No threat followed, no demand. Just one line from someone who knew I had started looking. I did not tell Dante. I had no proof the message was connected to Bianca, her family, or anything beyond a relative who objected to the process. Matchmaking often disturbed people who believed marriage was a private form of ownership. I requested an expanded background check instead. On Friday evening, May 22nd, Bianca's second preparation session ended shortly after 8. She left the office pale and distracted, checking the street before stepping outside. I waited 10 minutes, locked her file away, and took the rear elevator toward the parking corridor. A man stood beside the service door. Gray suit, ordinary face. No reason to remember him except that he knew my name. Miss Marchetti. The building is closed. I only need a moment. Then schedule one. I stepped toward the elevator. His hand closed around my wrist. The speed of it shocked me more than the pain. His thumb pressed into the inside of my arm while 4 fingers circled the bone. Bianca remains in the process, he said. You stopped checking her family. Let go. You heard me. And you heard me. I looked directly at him. Let go. His grip tightened once before releasing. You are brave because you think Varelli notices who stands near him. I did not mention Dante. You did not need to. He walked through the service door and disappeared. I remained beside the elevator, heart hammering, wrist burning where his hand had been. 4 dark ovals and the deeper mark of 1 thumb began appearing before I reached the office. I wrapped ice in a towel and told myself it was only a warning. No weapon, no broken bone, nothing worth losing control over. The next morning, Dante arrived without an appointment. I was carrying candidate files from the cabinet when my sleeve shifted. His gaze dropped immediately. What happened to your wrist? I pulled the cuff down. A drawer closed on it. Drawers do not leave thumbs. You inspect furniture professionally now? Look at me, I did. His face had become very still. Did someone touch you because of this process? I have no evidence of that. That was not my question. A stranger grabbed my wrist in the parking corridor. Dante stood. Description. No. Lena. I am handling it. You were threatened. I was warned. That distinction comforts you? It gives me accuracy. He came around the desk, then stopped several feet away. Show me the bruise. No, his jaw tightened. I will not touch you, but do not insult me with a bad lie. I lifted the sleeve myself. 5 marks circled my wrist. Dante stared at them long enough for anger to become visible only in how motionless he remained. What did he say? That Bianca stays in the process and I stop investigating her family. Remove her. No. His eyes snapped to mine. Someone put his hands on you, which proves someone wants her protected or removed. It does not prove Bianca knows anything. You're risking yourself for a candidate who may be lying. Every frightened woman looks dishonest to men who have never needed fear to survive. The sentence stopped him. I lowered my sleeve. I need more information. What do you need from me? The question surprised me. It was not an order, not a solution disguised as concern. Nothing visible, I said. No guards outside my office. No confrontation. No one frightening Bianca before I understand what she is afraid of. A car service. I take taxis. A verified car service with your permission. I considered. Only after late appointments. A new rear lock. The landlord decides that. Then I will ask the landlord. You will not buy the building. Something almost offended crossed his face. I had not suggested it. You considered it. Briefly. No. Understood. The parking corridor light was repaired that afternoon. A steel lock replaced the old one on Monday. A car began waiting after late sessions, but the driver never stepped out or treated me like property being transferred. Dante never mentioned the bruise again. He simply remembered. Over the next 2 weeks, he came to my office after nearly every candidate meeting. Sometimes the professional discussion lasted 10 minutes. He remained for an hour. He read my mother's matchmaking book, marked pages he disagreed with, and learned I took cream in my coffee but no sugar. He noticed when I skipped dinner. The first time, he ordered food without asking. I refused to eat it on principle. The second time, he placed a paper bag on the edge of my desk. There is soup inside, he said. You may eat it, throw it away, or allow it to become evidence that pride is not nutritious. You are becoming manipulative. I am offering choices. 3 bad ones. Progress remains progress. I ate the soup after he left. On Tuesday, May 26th, I taught him the difference between listening and solving. When a woman describes a problem, I said, your first responsibility is not to make it disappear. That seems inefficient. Pain is not a broken lock. What am I supposed to do? Ask what she needs. Practice. With what? Tell me a problem. I should have chosen something harmless. Instead, exhaustion loosened my judgment. The agency lost 2 clients this month. Why? One moved to an app. The other decided her married yoga instructor was her soulmate. Fire the yoga instructor. You failed. Pay the lost fees. Failed again. Dante leaned back. What do you need? The correct question landed differently than I expected. Nothing. That is not an answer you permit from clients. I looked down at the accounts on my desk. I need time to replace the revenue. Do you want advice? No. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. Then what am I supposed to do? Listen while I complain about algorithms, rising rent, and married men who use spirituality to avoid accountability. I dislike this method. You will survive. He listened. I told him more than I intended. My mother's reputation felt heavier when business was slow. I worried I would become the woman who lost what her mother built because she had been too proud to admit the world had changed. Dante did not offer money. He did not suggest buying the building. When I finished, he said, "You are not failing because the world became impatient." It was one sentence. I carried it home. I should have understood then that something dangerous was happening. Instead, I called it professional attachment. I told myself I waited for his footsteps because difficult cases demanded vigilance. I told myself the second coffee cup I prepared without thinking was hospitality. Then on Thursday evening, May 28th, Dante did not come. He had dinner with Serena at a restaurant near the river. I knew because I had arranged it. At 8:30, I looked at the untouched cup across from me and felt ridiculous. At 9, a society page posted a photograph of Dante holding an umbrella over Serena as she entered the restaurant. She looked graceful beneath the rain. He looked like the kind of man women believed could keep weather from touching them. I poured his coffee into the sink and finally stopped lying to myself. I had fallen in love with my client. The realization did not feel romantic. It felt like discovering a crack in the foundation of a building I had promised to protect. I had selected Serena. I had coached Dante. I had placed them at the same table and watched him become the kind of man I might have trusted if he had entered my life differently. Now every improvement I taught him would belong to another woman. Every honest question, every apology without defense, every moment of restraint would become part of someone else's marriage. I could not confess. A matchmaker who developed feelings for her client did not merely risk embarrassment. She risked the women who trusted her process. Every future client who believed her judgment was separate from her hunger and the agency her mother had left behind. So I did what women in my profession were trained to do. I organized my own heartbreak. I reduced unnecessary meetings. I sent written summaries. I emphasized Serena's compatibility in every report. Dante responded by becoming more formal. I assumed he had noticed my distance and accepted it. That hurt more than it should have. The Bellwether Foundation Gala took place on Saturday, May 30th. Serena arrived in dark green. Dante entered 10 minutes later and went directly to Valeria, who leaned more heavily on her cane than she had 3 weeks earlier. Rosina seated Serena beside him. They looked right together in the uncomplicated way society prefers. Old family beside old family, beauty beside power, elegance beside threat. I stood near the edge of the ballroom reviewing place cards when Adrian Vale's voice reached me from behind. Still positioning everyone else for the photograph? Adrian had aged attractively, which felt like an administrative injustice. Celeste stood beside him in silver, one hand resting on his arm. She gave me the careful smile of a woman who knew our history and had decided money made guilt impolite. Adrian had once been my fiancé. I had introduced him to Celeste because her foundation needed a consultant. 3 months later, he ended our engagement. 6 months after that, they married. Before leaving, he told me I knew how to make every woman unforgettable except myself. Adrian, I said. His gaze moved toward Dante and Serena. Impressive client. He is private. Nothing about Dante Virelli is private once he enters a room. Celeste touched his sleeve. We should not interrupt her work. She never minds, Adrian said. Lena has always preferred standing behind the arrangement. Enjoy the gala. You know, I used to think matchmaking was romantic. Then I realized it is mostly logistics for women who understand they will never be chosen themselves. The old wound opened with humiliating speed. I kept my face calm because I had spent years learning not to bleed where Adrian could see it. You have mistaken cruelty for insight again, I said. It remains one of your more consistent habits. Still sharp. Still married to the woman I introduced you to. His smile tightened. Before he could answer, the air behind me changed. Dante stood close enough that Adrian's posture shifted. Is there a problem? Dante asked. No problem. Old friends. Lena does not look amused. She rarely did. Dante's expression became still. Miss Marchetti is the only person in this room whose judgment I trust without reservation. If you speak to her again, choose words worthy of the privilege. Adrian's face lost color. Celeste pulled him away. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, the word miss settled between Dante and me like a locked door. You did not have to do that, I said. Yes, I did. He enjoys reactions. Then he should choose safer entertainment. Music moved through the ballroom. Serena stood across the room supporting Valeria's elbow. Dante followed my gaze. She is good with my mother. Yes. You chose well. That is the assignment. He looked at me. When this contract ends, what happens to you? I send the final invoice. That was not what I asked. I find another client. And after that, another. Something moved in his face and disappeared before I could understand it. He lifted one hand as though he might touch my cheek, but stopped before crossing the distance. My breathing changed. Dante noticed. He lowered his hand. You are still my matchmaker. I could not tell whether it was a reminder to me or himself. Yes. Serena called his name from the ballroom. Dante stepped back. I should return. You should. He went to her. I remained in the hallway until I trusted my face again. On Tuesday night, June 2nd, Bianca left a thin folder beneath the chair in my office. Inside were questions she had never asked me. Which trustees support Dante? Where are legacy documents stored during family events? Does the private study remain locked when guests are in the garden? Who controls security after midnight? Beneath the questions was a photograph of Bianca standing outside a hospital beside her mother, and a man I recognized from the security briefing Dante had allowed me to read. Marco Bellandi, a rival with shipping interests, old resentments, and enough patience to make hatred profitable. Bianca's mother was listed in my files as Elena Russo, but the photograph had been labeled Elena Bellandi. I searched my mother's handwritten records until midnight. 27 years earlier, Elena Bellandi had come to Marchetti matches under the name Elena Russo. She had not been looking for a husband. She had been looking for a way out. Across the final page, my mother had written in red ink, "Do not disclose address to brother Marco. He believes family loyalty includes ownership." At 11:40, Bianca knocked on the office door. She entered pale, shaking, and already aware of what I had found. Her confession came in pieces. Marco was her uncle. He had located Elena in a hospital 6 months earlier. He paid 2 bills, then used the debt to pull them back into his control. When Elena tried to disappear again, Marco took her. Bianca showed me a photograph of her mother sitting in an unfamiliar room, frightened but alive. Marco had forced Bianca to enter my agency, become a candidate, and reach Dante's private study during Valeria's birthday. She was expected to leave a listening device beneath his desk. "I gave him nothing important," Bianca said. "Wrong schedules, public information, old meeting rooms, enough to make him believe I obeyed. We tell Dante tonight." Terror transformed her face. "No, if Dante moves, Marco knows I spoke. Dante has resources. Dante has enemies watching those resources. My mother dies before his men find the door. I believed Dante could protect people. I also knew his first instinct was action, and action created movement. Give me until morning," I said. "Do not contact Marco unless he calls. Do not change your routine. Why are you helping me?" "Because my mother helped yours." Bianca looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "You love him." "We are discussing your mother." "You do. I see your face when he enters. That changes nothing. It changes what this will cost you." She left through the rear stairway. I copied the folder, locked the original and listening device inside my mother's cabinet, and wrote Dante a message requesting an urgent meeting on Monday morning, June 8th. I did not explain why. On Sunday night, June 7th, I remained at the office after 10, reviewing every possible way to warn Dante without exposing Elena. When I finally turned off the lights and entered the stairwell, 2 men were waiting near the service door. One was gray-haired with an ordinary face. The other wore gloves despite the warm evening. The younger man took my phone before I could reach the elevator. His fingers closed around the same wrist that had only recently healed. "Bianca remains in the process," the older man said. "You destroy whatever she gave you. You tell Varelli nothing. Where is Elena?" "Comfortable. Release her. After the birthday." The younger man twisted my arm behind me. Pain shot through my shoulder. "You will attend the dinner," the older man continued. "You will smile while Varelli chooses. If you interfere, your mother's agency burns. Rosa leaves through a parking garage with no cameras, and Elena stops receiving medication." Anger cut through fear. If you believed Dante would choose Bianca, you would not need to frighten the woman choosing for him. The older man's expression changed. The younger one drove me backward into the wall. The metal building directory struck beneath my shoulder blade. My breath left me. "Confidence becomes expensive," the older man said. He gripped my jaw. "You think Varelli notices you because he sits in your office?" "I did not say he notices me." "Good. Keep understanding your place." He struck the corner of my mouth with the back of his hand. My lip split against my teeth. The younger man shoved me sideways into the filing cabinet. My ribs struck the edge and pain exploded through my left side. I folded instinctively. Fingers closed around my upper arm and pulled me upright. "This is the part you hide," the younger man said. "Long sleeves, high collar. Women like you are good at pretending." They left me on the landing with my crushed phone beside my hand. For several minutes, I could hear only the emergency light buzzing and my own uneven breathing. I wanted my mother with the helplessness of a child. I wanted her green coat, her practical voice, her certainty. Instead, I climbed the stairs one step at a time, locked myself inside the office, washed the blood from my mouth, and sat behind her desk until dawn. On Monday morning, June 8th, I covered what I could. Concealer softened the split near my lip. A high-necked ivory blouse hid the mark near my collarbone. Long sleeves covered my arms. Nothing disguised the way my ribs protested every breath or the stiffness in my shoulder. Rosa took one look at me and stopped in the doorway. What happened? I fell. Into someone's hand? Please, Rosa, not now. Should I call the police? No. Dante? Absolutely not. Lena, I need you to trust me until the birthday. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. Today I am staying loudly. At 10, Dante arrived 2 hours early. His gaze found me behind the desk and stopped. Your phone is off. It broke. How? I dropped it. His eyes moved to my mouth. And your face? I fell in the stairwell. Dante closed the office door. Rosa rose in the outer room. I will bring coffee, she said, though no one had asked. Dante waited until she left. Walk toward me. Excuse me? Walk. This is not an examination. No. It is an opportunity to decide whether you intend to continue lying. Heat rose beneath my skin. I stepped around the desk. The first movement was controlled. The second pulled against my ribs. I shortened the third without meaning to. Dante saw. You are protecting your left side. I fell. Your shoulder? Hit the wall. Your wrist? My sleeve had shifted. A dark edge of bruising showed above the cuff. I pulled it down. Dante's entire body became still. Who touched you? No one. Lena. The sound of my name made the room smaller. This is not part of your contract. Show me your arm. No. He took one step closer and stopped outside my reach. His voice lowered. I am not asking to touch you. I am asking you to stop making me imagine worse than the truth. Bianca's mother appeared in my mind. Rosa in a parking garage. My mother's office burning. I lifted the sleeve myself. 5 dark fingerprints circled my wrist. Bruises disappeared beneath the fabric higher on my arm. Dante stared at them. No visible anger crossed his face. That was worse. A stairwell does not have 5 fingers, he said. I lowered my sleeve. I cannot tell you. Cannot or will not. Both. Is this connected to one of the women? I said nothing. His eyes sharpened. Is another woman in immediate danger? Yes. Would telling me now increase that danger? It might. Do you believe I would act before asking what my action costs? The question hurt because the honest answer was yes. You solve first, I said. You ask permission after the room has already been rearranged. Something crossed his face. He accepted the accusation. Fair. Do not sound reasonable now. What do you need? The question from our lessons landed between us. I need you not to make decisions about my life without me. Then I will ask. May I arrange a car for you and Rosa? No visible guards. Agreed. No one enters my office. Agreed. And you do not remove any candidate based on what you think my silence means. Dante's jaw tightened. Why? Because someone else pays if you move too quickly. His eyes moved toward the 3 files arranged across my desk. Elise Monroe, Serena Bellini, Bianca Russo. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he looked at me again. Keep every woman in the process. I stared at him. Even after seeing what they did to me, his gaze returned to the fingerprints around my wrist, especially after seeing them. Then Dante Varelli turned, opened the office door, and walked away without explaining what he meant. The following evening, the photographs arrived exactly as I had once told you they would. Serena Bellini stepped from a black car wearing a deep red dress. Dante stood beside her with one hand near the small of her back, not touching, but close enough for every camera to make an assumption. Valeria waited at the top of the mansion stairs. Rosina stood beside her wearing pearls in satisfaction. The headline beneath the first image read, Varelli's final choice? Serena Bellini joins family for private dinner. I sat alone in my office with my ribs wrapped beneath my blouse and my bruised arm resting against the desk. Dante had not called. He had not sent a message. He had not asked again who had hurt me. The car service arrived at 6, but I had sent it away. I stared at Serena's photograph until the screen blurred. She looked like everything I was not. Beautiful without effort, connected without dependency, Comfortable inside rooms where I still felt like paid assistants. More importantly, she was good. There was no cruelty in her for me to resent. She had respected Valeria, challenged Dante, and treated my work as something meaningful. I had chosen her because she deserved an honest chance. Now I understood the cost of having chosen well. At 7:15, someone threw a brick through the waiting room window. Glass burst across the floor. Rosa screamed from the hallway. I was out of my chair before my ribs allowed it, pain cutting through my side as I pulled her behind the front desk. No second object came. No man entered. The brick lay among broken glass wrapped in a printed page from Adrian's Society publication. The headline was larger than the photograph of Bianca beneath it. Matchmaker's secret candidate linked to Varelli enemy. My mother's framed photograph had fallen from the wall. The glass cracked across her smiling face. Rosa reached for it first. "Do not touch the broken edge." "I am not made of glass," I said automatically. Her eyes moved to my bruised wrist. "No, but you are acting like pain is proof you can survive more." Police arrived. They photographed the brick, the window, the message scrawled across the printed article. "Choose carefully." When they asked whether I had enemies, I thought of 2 men in a stairwell, Marco Belandi, Adrian, Rosina, and every person who believed a woman's work became public property the moment it failed. "I do not know," I said. Dante did not come. His attorney issued a short statement saying the Varelli family would not comment before Valeria's birthday. By Wednesday morning, 5 clients had canceled. The ethics board requested Bianca's full file. Rosina's lawyer demanded every document connected to the candidate process. Adrian's article claimed I had either failed to discover Bianca's real identity or deliberately introduced a Belandi operative into Dante's home. Both versions made me incompetent. One made me corrupt. I refused to release Bianca's private records without her consent. That decision gave Adrian another headline. Matchmaker hides files as Varelli scandal deepens. Dante remained silent. Serena appeared beside him at 2 more public events. In one photograph, Valeria held Serena's hand. In another, Dante leaned toward her while she spoke. Every image gave society the story it preferred. The powerful man had found the correct woman. The matchmaker had failed, become inconvenient, and disappeared behind the arrangement. On Thursday evening, June 11th, Serena came to my office alone. The new window had not yet been installed. A sheet of plywood covered the opening, making the room feel smaller and darker. Serena stood near my mother's cracked photograph while I finished a call with an angry client. "You should have canceled," she said after I hung up. "I did not invite you. Dante did not send me." "That is reassuring." She looked at the high collar of my blouse, then at the way I avoided leaning against my left side. "Are you hurt?" "I am working." "That was not my question." "You have spent too much time with Dante." "Perhaps." She sat across from me. "Do you love him?" My hand stopped above Bianca's file. "You are a candidate, and you are avoiding the question. My feelings are not part of your evaluation. No. They are the entire reason you look at me like an apology." I closed the file. "I do not dislike you. I know. You are the strongest match. That is not what I asked. You understand his mother. You can enter his world without shrinking. You have your own work, your own name, and enough courage to disagree with him. You are describing compatibility. That is my profession." Serena studied me. "Dante invited me to 3 public events after he saw your bruises." My breath caught. "He told you?" "No. I saw the way he looked at your sleeve when I arrived for the last meeting. I saw the new security at your building. I saw him stop sleeping." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he asked me to remain publicly visible beside him without explaining why. He said someone connected to the process was being watched. And you agreed. I believed someone's safety depended on it." "Did he say whose?" "No." Serena looked at me carefully. "But he did not look at me when he asked. Hope was dangerous. I refused it. You are still the woman most likely to be chosen. Do you want me to withdraw?" The answer rose from the selfish part of me before professional discipline stopped it. "No. Why?" "Because you trusted me. Because Dante deserves an honest choice. Because my feelings, if they exist, do not give me permission to punish you." Serena's expression softened. That may be the most painful answer you could have given. I am very good at painful answers. She stood. At the door, she looked back. For what it is worth, I do not think Dante has spent 60 days choosing among 3 women. What do you think he has been doing? Trying to understand why none of us feel like the woman he waits to see. She left before I could answer. I did not allow myself to believe her. Hope had once made me introduce Adrian to Celeste. Hope had kept me waiting after he began leaving meetings early to take her calls. Hope was simply humiliation before evidence arrived. On Monday, June 15th, Rosa brought me an envelope without a return address. Inside was a photograph of Elena Belandi sitting beside a window, a newspaper dated that morning resting across her lap. She was alive. Beneath the photograph, someone had written, "Birthday, no sooner." Bianca called from an unknown number that night. They know Dante changed the security at your building. Did they hurt your mother? Not yet. Where are you? I cannot tell you. Bianca, listen to me. Dante knows something. How much? Enough to understand the danger is connected to the process. She began crying quietly. Marco says the birthday dinner must continue exactly as planned. He says Serena will be beside Dante. The trustees will meet in the study, and I will place the device. You will not. Then my mother dies. Your mother survived Marco once, because your mother helped her. Yours is gone, Lena. Mine is still waiting for me to make the correct mistake. The words hurt, because they were true. Dante will not let him keep her. You still trust him after he walked away from your bruises? I looked toward the dark window. Yes. The answer came before I could protect myself from it. Bianca heard. Then tell him everything. I cannot risk Elena. You are already risking yourself. The line went dead. 2 days later, a doctor appeared at my office claiming Rosa had requested a house call. Rosa denied it too quickly. The doctor examined my ribs in the small staff room, confirmed severe bruising but no fracture, cleaned the cut near my lip, and told me rest was not a suggestion. I asked who paid him. The building insurer, he said. My building has no medical insurer. He packed his bag. Then perhaps someone dislikes unpaid invoices. Dante never mentioned the visit. I never thanked him. Neither of us acknowledged that his silence contained movement. On Friday, June 19th, Elise withdrew. She met me at a restaurant near the courthouse and returned the candidate agreement unsigned. He is not choosing me, she said. You cannot know that. I bill people for recognizing evidence. What evidence? He asked my opinions. He challenges Serena. He protects Bianca. But every time someone enters a room, he looks at the door, as if expecting the wrong person. I lowered my coffee. You are imagining things. No, you are. Elise leaned back. I like him. I even respect him more than I expected, but I have no interest in competing with a woman who refuses to admit she entered the race. There is no race. Then why are you losing sleep? She left before dessert. I kept her file active because Dante had said every woman must remain in the process. But the truth had begun reducing the choices without my help. Bianca was trapped. Elise was gone. Serena remained. So did I, though I had never been listed. On Wednesday, June 24th, Valeria invited me to tea. I expected questions about the candidates. Instead, she asked about my mother. She built the agency alone? After my father died. How old were you? 17. And when she became ill? I was 28. Valeria looked toward the garden. Dante was 26 when his father died. Everyone praised how quickly he became a man. No one asked whether he had been allowed to remain a son for even one day. He does not like helplessness. No. Helplessness was punished in this house. She touched the handle of her cane. His father believed the person who moved first controlled the outcome. Dante learned to make decisions before fear could enter the room. That is not always protection. I know. Valeria's eyes returned to me. He is learning that from you. For his future wife. Perhaps. Serena is a strong match. Serena is wonderful. The answer did not comfort me. Valeria smiled faintly. You matchmakers are very clever until the file has your own name on it. My name is not in the file. That may be the problem. I left before she could say more. On Sunday, June 28th, Adrian published a second article. This one included photographs of my broken office window, a copy of the ethics board request, and an anonymous quote from a Virelli trustee claiming Dante had been manipulated by a professionally compromised matchmaker. Rosina denied providing the quote. No one believed her denial enough to challenge it publicly. Clients continued canceling. The agency account dropped below the amount needed for July rent. Rosa offered her savings. I refused. Dante sent nothing. I hated that part of me had expected him to rescue the agency despite everything I had taught him. I hated more that his restraint felt like abandonment. On Tuesday, June 30th, Serena arrived for her final private meeting with Dante. She wore white, not red, and carried no rosemary or careful gift. I observed from the terrace while they spoke in Valeria's garden. Serena said something that made Dante look toward the house. Toward me. I stepped back before he could see me watching. Later, Serena found me in the library. He asked whether I could live with security changing my schedule, she said. What did you say? That I could live with security. I could not live with a husband who used fear to make decisions for me. Good answer. You taught him to ask. That is my job. He asked what I would do if the man I loved was emotionally committed. Elsewhere, my throat tightened. What did you say? That I would not marry him. Did he say he was emotionally committed elsewhere? No. Serena studied my face. He did not need to. I closed the file in my hands. The birthday is 6 days away. Yes. Society expects your name. Society is often wrong. Are you? She looked toward the garden. I think Dante admires me. I think he trusts me. I think we might have built a respectable marriage if neither of us had met the person who made respect feel insufficient. Who did you meet? Serena smiled sadly. A man who spends every conversation trying not to say your name. Before leaving, she touched my hand, careful of the fading bruise. Whatever happens at the birthday, do not let anyone turn your silence into consent. On Friday, July 3rd, Bianca appeared at my apartment just before dawn. She wore the same pale blue dress from her first meeting, wrinkled now, and carried no bag. Marco moved my mother, she said. The room in the photographs is empty. How did you get away? He wanted me to deliver this. She placed the silver listening device on my kitchen table. He says I must hide it in Dante's study before the trustees meet. Where is Elena? I do not know. Bianca's face collapsed. I did everything he asked, and he moved her anyway. Then we tell Dante now. What if he already knows? Why would you think that? One of Marco's men disappeared. The gray-haired one who attacked you. 2 bank accounts were frozen. A warehouse Marco used was raided by federal agents yesterday. Dante's silence had already set something in motion. The thought moved through me like fear and relief together. Did Marco say anything about Dante? He said Virelli was pretending to choose Serena while moving men through Queens. Bianca looked at me. He said Dante's weakness had made him predictable. What weakness? He did not say. We went to the mansion together. Dante was not there. Rafe, his security chief, met us at the gate and listened without interruption. When Bianca placed the device in his hand, he looked at me. Mr. Virelli expected this. Where is he? Handling the location change. Elena? Possibly. Why did no one tell me? Rafe's expression remained neutral. Because the men watching you needed to believe the warning worked. Anger rose. You used me as bait. No, Mr. Virelli refused that plan. Then what did he do? He used himself. Rafe would say no more. Bianca remained at the mansion under protection. I returned to the office, where another cancellation waited, and the July rent notice lay unopened on my desk. Dante called for the first time in 26 days that evening. Are you safe? He asked, no greeting. No explanation. Rafe has Bianca. I know. Did you find Elena? Silence. Dante. Not yet. You should have told me what you were doing. Yes. That is all? No. It is the only answer that does not make my fear an excuse. His voice sounded tired, rougher than I had ever heard it. Why Serena? I asked. The question escaped before pride could stop it. Why did you take her everywhere after seeing my bruises? He was silent long enough to make regret rise. Because people were watching where I looked. And where were you looking? Another pause. At the problem I could not afford them to identify. That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give before Monday. Then do not expect me to trust it. I do not. Pain moved beneath the calm in his voice. I only need you alive long enough to hate me afterward. The line went dead. Valeria's birthday arrived on Monday, July 6th, beneath white roses and warm garden lights. The mansion courtyard had been transformed without losing its dignity. Long tables curved around the fountain. An orchestra played near the terrace. Reporters approved by the foundation waited behind a velvet rope. Trustees, business allies, relatives, judges, and society figures filled the garden with the careful laughter of people who understood reputation was another form of money. I wore a black dress with long sleeves and a high neckline. The bruises around my wrist had faded to yellow, but the marks higher on my arm remained visible beneath thin fabric. My ribs still hurt if I breathed too deeply. I carried the final candidate reports in a leather folder that had belonged to my mother. Elise arrived in midnight blue despite withdrawing. I enjoy professional disasters when I am no longer responsible for them, she said. Bianca stood near a security guard, pale but composed. Serena arrived in the red dress from the photographs. She looked exactly like the woman everyone expected Dante to choose. Valeria welcomed her with both hands. Rosina smiled for the cameras. Dante was nowhere visible. Adrian and Celeste arrived together, though the distance between them suggested marriage had become another room they occupied separately. Adrian lifted his champagne glass when he saw me. Brave of you to come. It is my client's event. Your client appears to have survived your judgment. His gaze moved toward Serena. She does look unforgettable. Celeste whispered his name in warning. He ignored her. Rosina approached before I could answer. Miss Marchetti, we should discuss the damage before Dante announces his choice. The candidate process remains confidential. Confidentiality ended when you introduced a Belandi into this house. Conversation around us softened. People were listening. Bianca was coerced, I said. According to you. According to evidence. Evidence you refused to give the trustees. Because a kidnapped woman's location was at risk. Rosina looked toward the reporters. Convenient. Adrian stepped closer. Lena has always been gifted at making her mistakes sound like sacrifices. The old shame rose, but it did not own the room anymore. Bianca's mother came to my agency 27 years ago seeking protection from Marco Belandi, I said clearly. My mother helped her disappear. Marco found her again, took her, and forced Bianca into this process. Bianca did not enter Dante's life for money, status, or revenge. Rosina's mouth tightened. And where is this supposedly kidnapped woman? The garden gates opened. Every head turned. Dante entered wearing black. Beside him, a nurse pushed a wheelchair. Elena Belandi sat beneath a blanket, pale and weak but alive. Bianca made a sound that broke through every whisper in the courtyard. Mama. She ran across the garden, dropped to her knees, and wrapped both arms around her mother. Elena held her daughter's face and began crying. Dante stopped near Valeria. His gaze found me immediately, moving once to the sleeve covering my wrist before returning to my face. Continue, he said. Rosina recovered first. We are discussing Miss Marchetti's failure to identify an enemy operative. No, Dante replied. You are using a frightened woman and an injured one to entertain reporters. Adrian shifted. The public has a right to understand how this happened. Dante looked at him. You received Bianca's photograph directly from Marco Belandi. Adrian's face changed. That is an accusation. No, this is. Dante lifted one hand. A screen near the orchestra came to life. Audio played through the garden. Adrian's voice negotiated payment with a man connected to Belandi. Celeste stepped away from her husband as if the sound itself had struck her. Dante continued. You published documents without verifying them because humiliating Lena was more profitable than telling the truth. Adrian's glass trembled. I am a journalist. You are a man who recognized an old wound and mistook it for an opportunity. Dante turned toward the trustees. Bianca was instructed to place a listening device in my study tonight. She never placed it. Lena secured the device and protected Bianca's confession even after Belandi's men followed her into her building. Valeria looked at me. What men? Dante's face became still. They put their hands on her because she discovered the truth. A murmur moved through the garden. I felt every eye shift toward my sleeves. They threatened her agency, Rosa, and Elena's life. Then they ordered her to attend tonight and smile while I chose. Rosina stared at me. You were attacked? I said nothing. Dante answered. She came to work the next morning with a split lip, bruised ribs, and fingerprints around her wrist and upper arm. She still refused to expose Bianca until Elena was safe. His voice roughened on the final words. When I asked who touched her, she protected the woman who had lied to her. Bianca began crying again. Elena reached for my hand from her chair. I crossed the garden and took it. Your mother saved me once, Elena whispered. You saved my daughter. You survived both times, I said. Dante faced Bianca. Your uncle and the men who attacked Lena are in federal custody. Their evidence includes the device, financial transfers, security footage, and the threats sent to your phone. Marco Belandi will not reach either of you again. Relief broke across Bianca's face. You knew before Lena told you. Lena never told me. Dante's gaze moved to mine. She believed speaking would put your mother at greater risk. He turned toward Rosina. That belief is the opposite of complicity. Rosina lifted her chin. You endangered the family by keeping Bianca in the process. I kept her where Marco expected her to be while removing the danger around her. Without consulting the trustees. The trustees were compromised. 2 security men moved behind Vittorio Varelli, one of Dante's uncles. His face collapsed before anyone touched him. Dante displayed bank transfers proving Vittorio had sold trust schedules and security details to Belandi. Valeria closed her eyes. Rosina sat down slowly. As for the Varelli Legacy Trust, Dante said, my attorneys challenged the household condition this morning. It is void under state law, or it will be fought until no asset remains worth controlling. If the board removes voting powers because I am unmarried, remove them. I will not use a woman's name, body, or future as evidence of stability for men who confuse marriage with governance. The garden remained silent. Valeria's eyes filled. The empty chair beside Dante remained untouched. She looked at her son for a long moment. Then the trust is no longer the reason for tonight. No. And no woman is being presented as proof. No. Then I will ask the only question that matters. Valeria steadied herself with both hands on the table. Which woman have you chosen, Dante? Every face turned toward the candidates. Dante looked at Elise first. She lifted one eyebrow. We would last 6 months, she said, and spend 5 of them renegotiating dinner. Nervous laughter moved through the crowd. Dante looked at Bianca, who remained beside Elena. She shook her head through tears. Then he looked at Serena. The garden seemed to settle around her. She was beautiful, composed, respected, and exactly where everyone expected the answer to land. Serena held Dante's gaze, then looked toward me. Something almost sad softened her expression. Dante turned away from her. He looked directly at me. Lena Marchetti. The name did not make sense at first. I heard it as if spoken from another room. A camera clicked. Someone inhaled sharply. Adrian's glass stopped halfway to his mouth. Serena closed her eyes for one brief second and smiled. Dante crossed the space between us but stopped several feet away. He did not touch me. He did not gesture toward the empty chair. He simply stood where I could see him clearly. No, I said. The word escaped before thought. Pain crossed his face, but he did not hide from it. You cannot say my name because the other choices became impossible. I am not. You cannot choose me because I was hurt protecting your family. I did not. You cannot announce your matchmaker as though she were a 4th candidate waiting behind the file. You were never a candidate. His voice was low enough that the garden leaned toward it. Then what was I? Dante looked around at the guests, the cameras, the women I had brought into his life, and his mother beside the empty chair. The reason none of the candidates could become my choice. My breath caught. He continued before I could interrupt. I did not fall in love with Lena because someone hurt her. I loved her before the first bruise appeared. Silence deepened. I began loving her the night she pushed my check back across the desk and told me money could not make a woman feel safe. I did not understand it then. I only knew I wanted to remain in the first room where my name failed to control the conversation. His eyes stayed on mine. She believed I returned after every meeting because the candidates required discussion. I chose restaurants near her office because I wanted a reason to go back. She believed I remembered her coffee because I noticed details. I remembered because nothing about her felt small to me. She believed I read her mother's book to improve the process. I read it because it was the closest thing she had to family, and I wanted to understand the woman who taught her to see everyone except herself. Tears burned behind my eyes. The old photographs, late coffee, repaired radiator, nearby restaurants, and 2 cups waiting on my desk rearranged themselves in memory. "You stopped coming," I said, "after the gala. Because you were still responsible for 3 women. A private confession would have forced you to choose between your feelings and the reputation your mother left you. You went everywhere with Serena. After I saw your bruises, I knew Belandi's men would watch where I looked. Serena agreed to stand beside me publicly so they would believe my attention had moved away from you." Serena stepped forward. "He told me someone connected to the process was in danger," she said. "He never told me he loved you." Her smile became gentler. "He did not need to. Every time a door opened, he checked whether you had entered." I looked back at Dante. "You let me believe you did not care." "Yes." The admission hurt. "Why?" "Because the men who touched you believed their warning had worked. I needed them to keep believing it until Elena was safe and the evidence was complete." "You could have told me something." "I wanted to." "But you decided for me." "Yes." He accepted that too, and I was wrong to let protection become another form of control. "I am sorry." No explanation followed, no request that I understand. Just the words I had once asked whether he knew how to say. "When did you know?" I asked. "That I loved you?" He took a breath. "The night you told me listening was not the same as solving. You spoke about losing your mother's agency, and every part of me wanted to remove the problem. You asked me to sit with it instead. I realized I wanted to become the kind of man you could trust with pain I was not allowed to fix." My tears escaped. Dante did not move closer. "I am not asking you to marry me tonight," he said. "I am not asking you to fill that chair, satisfy a trust, comfort my mother, or reward me for protecting you. The contract ends at midnight, tomorrow. When I am no longer your client, I will come to your office without a file and ask whether you will have one honest dinner with me." Valeria looked at the empty chair, and then at me. "It has been empty this long," she said softly. "It can remain empty one more evening if the woman who belongs there has not chosen it yet." The garden waited. I had spent my life helping other women become answers. Dante was offering me a question. "Ask me tomorrow," I said. Relief moved through his face so quickly I almost missed it. "I will." He did not touch me. That mattered. The birthday continued, though nothing returned to normal. Bianca remained beside Elena. Elise drank champagne and told 3 trustees their governance model was embarrassing. Serena sat with Valeria and refused every sympathetic look directed at her. Adrian left before dessert. Celeste did not leave with him. Reporters published the truth before midnight, supported by recordings Dante's attorneys released and statements from all 3 candidates. The ethics board withdrew its inquiry the next morning. 2 canceled clients returned before 10. A third sent flowers with an apology written by an assistant. At 11, Dante entered Marchetti matches alone. No guards came upstairs. No blank check appeared on my desk. He wore a dark navy suit and carried a folder. "You are early," I said. "I have been outside for 20 minutes. Why?" "You said tomorrow." I did not know what hour became appropriate. "That sounds almost nervous." "It is deeply unpleasant." He placed the folder on my desk. Inside were signed statements from Elise, Serena, and Bianca confirming the process had been genuine. There was a formal retraction from Adrian's publication, a letter from the ethics board, and a building report confirming the security system had been installed as restitution for danger created by the case. There was no ownership transfer, no donation to my agency, and no attempt to buy the building. "You repaired what you could," I said. "Without purchasing anything you did not ask me to sell. Progress. Slow progress." His gaze moved to my wrist. The bruise was visible because I had stopped hiding it. How are your ribs? Healing. The doctor said there was no fracture. You sent him. I asked Rosa whether you had accepted medical care. She said no. I asked whether she wanted the name of a doctor. She said yes. You learned to use intermediaries. Rosa says I remain exhausting. She is rarely wrong. What happened to the men? Dante's expression became guarded. They are alive, in custody, and unable to reach you. I wanted consequences you would not have to carry. The answer surprised me. You chose restraint. I am learning that protection is not permission to create another burden for the person protected. My throat tightened. He stood on the other side of my mother's desk, powerful enough to command rooms, and uncertain enough to wait for me. I am no longer your client, he said. The contract ended at midnight. I checked twice. Then may I ask you a personal question? You may. Will you have dinner with me? No candidates? No. No mother? She objected. No trustees? I threatened exile. No photographers? The restaurant has no front window. I let him wait. He did not fill the silence. One dinner, I said. Dante exhaled. One. And if it goes badly? I survive rejection. You have practiced. Publicly. Our first date took place at a small Italian restaurant 6 blocks from my office. The owner knew Dante but did not fear him enough to stop arguing about how pasta should be cooked. Dante arrived without a driver and parallel parked so badly that I laughed before he reached the sidewalk. You control shipping routes, I said. Not curbs. He brought no flowers or jewelry. He brought a worn copy of my mother's first matchmaking book, found in a used bookstore with her original publicity photograph still tucked inside. One meaningful object, he said. I was told excess can become pressure. Who told you that? A difficult professional. We ate slowly. For the first time, no reports waited afterward. I learned he baked bread with Valeria every Sunday and had never produced a loaf she considered edible. He learned I read the final page of novels first when anxious because certainty made the middle easier. I asked why every candidate dinner had been near my office. I told you, he said. I wanted to return. Even after Serena? Especially after Serena. She was perfect. She was. That is not flattering. It is honest. Serena is intelligent, kind, and capable of entering my world without shrinking. I admired her, but I never wondered what she was doing when she was not in the room. The simplicity of the sentence undid me. And me? I knew when your office lights were on from 3 streets away. We walked back after dinner. Rain had begun, soft enough to silver the pavement. At the entrance to Marchetti Matches, Dante stopped beneath the awning. The city moved around us. No guards, no candidates, no mother waiting for an answer. I need to tell you something, I said. All right. I fell in love with you before Serena's second meeting. His eyes closed for one brief second. That long? Do not sound pleased. I am trying not to. I hated myself for it. Why? Because I had selected women who trusted me. Because you were my client. Because Adrian once used my introduction to choose someone else. And I felt history repeating itself every time you smiled at Serena. Dante's expression hardened at Adrian's name, then softened. You were never a bridge to another woman. I did not know that. I know. He lifted one hand and stopped before touching me. May I kiss you? My breath caught. The first time he had nearly touched me, he stepped back because I was still his matchmaker. Now the contract was over, the street was quiet, and the choice belonged entirely to me. Yes, I said. Dante's hand settled lightly against my cheek. He moved slowly enough that I could change my mind at any point. His mouth touched mine with a restraint that felt more intimate than urgency. The kiss was warm, careful, and almost unbearably gentle. When I leaned closer, something in him loosened. His other hand rested at my waist, avoiding the bruised side of my ribs without being told. The kiss deepened, not because he took more, but because I gave it. When we separated, his forehead rested briefly against mine. Are you hurt? He asked. Not by that. May I do it again? You have become cautious. I am learning to ask before I decide. I pulled him closer. Then ask less slowly. He kissed me again beneath the awning while rain moved across East 68th Street and the office lights above us waited. Dating Dante Varelli was not simple. He called before visiting because I required it. He failed twice in the first month. He sent a security car after me when my train stopped underground and discovered that fear did not make unilateral decisions acceptable. We argued for 40 minutes. He apologized without explaining why he had been right. I learned that growth was less romantic than promises and more convincing. He learned that my independence was not a threat to his usefulness. I learned accepting care did not make me owned. He sat in my office while I worked late and did not ask me to stop. He brought dinner and left it within reach. When clients canceled, he listened before offering solutions. When I woke from dreams of the stairwell and fingers around my wrist, he did not tell me the danger was over. He asked what would help my body believe it. Serena remained part of our lives. She restored the Varelli Theater and later began dating Elise's brother, which Elise called an unacceptable conflict of interest while arranging their second dinner. Bianca and Elena moved to another state under names of their own choosing. Bianca sent me a postcard from a museum where she had found work. On the back she wrote, "Your mother saved mine once. You saved us again." Adrian's publication survived, but his reputation did not recover as quickly as he expected. Celeste separated from him before winter. I took no pleasure in that, though Rosa took enough for both of us. Rosina was removed from the legacy board after records proved she had ignored Vittorio's suspicious transfers because challenging him would have threatened her own position. She blamed Dante, the attorneys, modern women, and eventually the weather. Valeria's health stabilized. She stopped arranging women beside her son and began arranging me beside herself whenever she wanted support in an argument. Marchetti matches recovered. New clients came because the scandal had made us visible, but I refused every person attracted only by Dante's name. 6 months after Valeria's birthday, Dante entered Marchetti matches on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. He wore the same controlled expression he had brought the first night, but no client file rested beneath his arm. "You look nervous," I said. "I am." "That remains entertaining." I suspected. He waited until Rosa closed the outer office door. Then he came around my mother's desk and lowered himself to one knee. "The ring was old, simple, and beautiful. I came here asking you to find a woman I could place beside me," he said. "You taught me that a wife is not evidence of stability, an answer to a deadline or a person fitted into an empty chair. She is someone whose freedom must remain intact beside your love." My eyes filled. "That sounds rehearsed." I practiced in the car. "Continue. You know how I fail. You know what fear turns me into if I do not speak before acting. You know the life attached to my name. And you have never confused understanding it with surrendering to it. I am not asking because my mother is waiting, because a trust requires it, or because anyone outside this room needs proof." He opened the box. "Lena Marchetti, will you marry me? I am keeping the agency. I would never survive working here. You do not buy the building. I have been forbidden by 3 attorneys and Rosa. When you are afraid, you tell me before you send cars, guards, or solutions." "Yes." Valeria continues interfering with dinner. "No power in the city can prevent that." "And the empty chair?" Dante looked at me. "It remains yours to choose." I held out my hand. "Then yes." He closed his eyes for one quiet second before sliding the ring onto my finger. "May I kiss you?" "You are still asking." "Only where the answer matters." "Yes." We married in Valeria's garden the following spring. Serena wore blue. Elise denied crying. Bianca and Elena returned for the ceremony and sat beside Rosa. Valeria walked without her cane for 6 determined steps before admitting pride was not a medical plan. The chair beside Dante, empty through years of family celebrations, held my mother's photograph during the ceremony. After the vows, Valeria touched the frame and whispered, "She should have seen this." "She did," I said. Later, after the final guest left and the garden lights softened, Dante found me beside that chair. The white roses had begun closing in the night air. Music drifted faintly from the house. He offered his hand but did not take mine until I placed it in his. "Mrs. Varelli," he said, "that will require practice. I have patience. You developed it. Recently. Under expert supervision." Looked at the man who had entered my office believing love was another problem urgency could solve. He had not rescued me into loving him. He had noticed me, failed me, listened, changed, and waited for me to choose him back. The first time Dante saw my bruises, I believed pain had finally made me visible. I understood now that he had seen me long before anyone tried to leave proof on my skin. "May I kiss my wife?" he asked. "You may." His kiss was slow, private, and warm. This time there was no client, no deadline, no enemy watching, no mother waiting at a table, and no empty chair demanding an answer. There was only the man I had chosen, the life I had kept, and the quiet knowledge that real love did not make a woman disappear inside someone else's world. It saw her clearly, asked honestly, protected without owning, and remained patient enough for her answer.